Hey, what's going on? My name is Avi. Thank you so much for joining me today. You ever seen a hot woman on the other side of the room and really wanted to approach them, but didn't because you had absolutely no idea what to say? You were overwhelmed, your palms are sweating, maybe your heart was racing, and before you knew it, they leave the room, the opportunity's gone, and then you're beating yourself up. If that's relatable at all to you, well, that tells us a couple things. One, you're a human being. No shame there. We've all been there. We've all had that experience. You are definitely not alone. And two, you're in the right place because the subject of today's video is how to approach a woman in 2026. Now, firstly, I'm just going to say that video title is kind of funny because the truth is that how to approach a woman in 2026 is the same way you did it in 2025, 2024, and probably the same way the Egyptians did it back in 2026 BCE. So, all that to say, let's get the fuck into this. I do want to preface by saying, yo, I'm an average guy. I'm not an expert on this topic. I just want to share some things that over the years I have found to be helpful in my quest of looking for a life partner. And I also will preface that with my whole vibe is like, I generally am not about like just looking to get laid or whatever. If that's what you're into, this probably isn't the video for you. Although like, I think that a lot of the concepts will still apply if that is your sole goal, which is just to get laid. But for me, it's always been about building a meaningful, romantic, emotional connection, which of course is going to include physical connection. But I just wanted to be straight up with that out the gate. So without further ado, let's get into this. I'm going to be discussing three main concepts. And when you hear them, you might be thinking you already know what they are. But I'm going to ask you to just kind of hear me out because they might be a little bit different and maybe more nuanced than what you're initially suspecting as you hear them. So those three concepts: be direct, be genuine, have social skill. Let's talk about step number one, be direct. What do I actually mean? That could mean something as simple as going up and telling someone that you think they're cute and starting the approach that way. But that's not actually what I'm referring to when I say be direct. Be direct is kind of this philosophy that I've learned over the years to combat all the excuses in your mind that will inevitably come up when you do see that hot person, right? Your brain, because it's like, oh my God, this is so scary, right? The fear of rejection, the fear of social embarrassment. What if you go up? Your brain starts playing all these scenarios like, what if I fail? And then everyone around who's watching it, thinks like less of me, or it's just socially weird. And, your brain's going to come up with all these reasons why you shouldn't fucking do it. And I think this is an important time to reference a piece of wisdom that my dad used to tell me, which is, don't worry what other people are thinking of you because they're not thinking of you, period. Even if someone like sees your approach and they judge it for a moment, they're just going to move on with their life because we're all egotistical creatures and we're more concerned with what's going on with us. They might think about it a little bit, but then they're just going to move on. So it's not that big of a deal. That said, that's a very logical way to approach this. And in the moment when you're really feeling seized, right, your palms are sweating, your heart's racing, you're overwhelmed, all those excuses are flooding through your mind of why you shouldn't approach this woman. Even that logic, that wisdom that my dad shared might not be enough to get you to go and do it. So I have developed this rule for myself, and I think it really combats the element of the approach that's really scary, which is like, what do I say, right? Because that can be a big time excuse. Like, I'm not going to approach her because I don't know what to say. So here's how I've dealt with it over the years. And you will fall on your face a little bit. I certainly did, but I'm telling you, this over time is the way to force results and to force social skill, which we'll get to step three. But what you do is this: you walk towards them. Wow, that's a revelational concept, right? But hear me out. You walk towards them. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, right? So there's a line between you and this woman. There's an imaginary line. You walk towards them. What will that do? Well, if you walk far enough, even if you don't know what to say, here's what's going to happen. If you walk close enough to them, you will eventually get to a point where it is so socially awkward for you to not say something that you won't help but say something. And what you'll find is that you actually will say something that's not idiotic a good amount of the time, and the rate at which you say something that's not idiotic and perhaps even beneficial and helpful to you will increase the more and more and more that you do it. And what will also happen, especially the first couple of times, like let's say you do this the first couple of times and you just fall on your face, you fail, it's just embarrassing, the whole thing doesn't work. You will see, one, it's not that bad to fail. Yeah, stings in the moment, but it's really not that big of a deal. It's like exposure therapy for your brain. The more you expose your brain to it, your brain's like, oh, there wasn't anything to fear. It's not that big of a deal. So that's going to desensitize you to the fear. It's going to desensitize you to the negative emotions that accompany rejections. So you just won't give as much of a fuck about it, and you'll be more inclined to override those fears in the future, to have the courage to overcome them. But also, you're actually going to get better at saying something when you don't know what to say. And that's the key, right? I think when it comes to approaching women, people get stuck in, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? Right? There's fucking billions of YouTube videos, theoretically. I don't actually know for sure. But there's virtually infinite YouTube videos about what to say to a woman. But if you're focusing so much on what to say, that's anxiety, right? In a way, that's paradox of choice. Paradox of choice says the more choices we have for something, the less satisfied with any one choice that we end up making in the end, because by making that one choice, there was an opportunity cost, meaning we gave up on all the other choices. And it's kind of the same with what to say to a woman. It's so hard to decide because theoretically there's infinite things you could say to a woman. So by thinking, oh, I gotta pick the perfect thing, you're putting so much pressure on yourself to pick that perfect thing to say out of all the infinite things that you could say, that you end up crippling yourself, right? It's paralysis through analysis, and then you end up just not doing the approach. So what I'm saying is that's a red herring. Stop focusing on what to say and trust that over time, by executing that dynamic that we just talked about, that if you literally just force your legs, force your limbs to walk towards that woman in the straightest, shortest line possible, if you just do that, eventually you will get close enough to that woman in space, like proximately in proximity, you will get close enough to that woman in space. You will have no choice but to say something, because it will be so awkward, right? If you walk up to a woman and you're 2 feet away from them and you just stand there, that is horribly awkward. Your brain will not let you do that. Your brain will pick the next less horrifying alternative, which at that point will be saying something, right? When you're 20 feet away from them, the more horrifying alternative is thinking of what to say. But when you're 2 feet away from them and you've approached from the other side of the room, now the less horrifying thing is to say something. The more horrifying thing is to not say something. So that's the key with this be direct approach, is you're now all of a sudden flipping the tables, right? You're making the desirable action, which is approaching them and saying something, you're making that the less horrifying alternative, right? This is very similar to, like, if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to keep a good physique, it's very beneficial to keep trigger foods out of the house, right? Because in that case, the desirable behavior, which is sticking to your diet, is all of a sudden much harder to not do when you keep the trigger foods out of the house, right? Because now, in order to break the diet, you actually have to go out to a grocery store or to some place where you can get the food and then get the food, right? It's just way more effort than if you keep that shit in the house. So in other words, you're increasing the friction for the undesirable behavior, which is, the eating the food that you shouldn't be eating. And you're also decreasing the friction for just doing what you should be doing, which is sticking to your diet. And this is the exact same principle. We're turning up the friction on not saying something, right? When you're 2 feet away from the woman, you have to say something. The social friction, the social awkwardness of not saying something just gets too high, right? So we're turning up the friction on the undesirable behavior, which is not saying something, not approaching, and we're turning down the friction, relatively speaking, on saying something. All of a sudden, it's less frictionful to say something than to not say something. And that's the key with this approach. And the next key of that approach is that the more and more and more that you do that, you're going to desensitize your mind to it, right? Exposure therapy, you're going to see it's not that bad to fail. So you're going to build a fucking armor. You're going to build a mental toughness, a mental fortitude, a mental resilience to the fear of rejection, to the fear of social embarrassment from failing an approach. You're going to see that's not really that fucking big of a deal. And the more and more and more that you do this, you're just going to get comfortable. And that skill of, like, not knowing what the fuck to say, your brain's going to figure it out. Your brain is a machine of learning. It's a learning machine. The more that you put it in a certain situation, it's going to learn and learn and learn and get better at that. This is no fucking different. Talking to a woman is a skill. So that's step number one. Be direct. And again, you probably might have heard that at the beginning and thought, be direct with your words. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm saying literally walk towards that woman. Anytime you see a hot woman, practice the mindset, practice the action, walk towards them. And what's going to happen, and especially, not just even if you don't have something to say, especially if you don't have something to say, walk towards that woman. Because what's going to happen is when you get within 2 or 3 feet of them, you're going to say something, because otherwise it's going to be so fucking horribly awkward. Your brain just won't even let you go there. You're going to say something. And the first few times, you're probably going to sound like an idiot. But the more and more and more that you do this, you're not going to sound like an idiot anymore. You're going to develop that skill. So that is step number 1. Be direct. Train yourself to build that habit to always, every time you see a hot woman, if you're single, you're walking towards them. You walk towards them and you walk right towards them until it gets so awkward that you can't help it. You can't help but say something, and there you go. So now, step 2, be genuine. This one's going to be a lot shorter. All I have to say on this one is all the pickup artist stuff out there is bullshit. It's bullshit, because the thesis of all pickup artist stuff is this. It says everything you've done up until this point hasn't worked. Therefore, you're fundamentally defective as a human being. Therefore, you have to do something that is not yourself in order to attract women. That is absolute freaking crap. The accurate thesis is social connection is difficult to do when you're not being fully yourself, right? So the quest isn't to change yourself because you're fundamentally defective. Rather, the quest is to figure out how to communicate yourself more effectively, because we have a lot of fear around actually being ourselves. So I challenge you to have the courage to really be yourself, because when you really are yourself, that's how you're going to attract someone who loves you for the real you. And on the other hand, if you're doing some pickup artist stuff, or even if you're not doing pickup artist stuff, but you're just kind of not being fully genuine towards that other person, they're going to be attracted to a version of you that's not even the real you. And that's really bad. That's wasting their time, and it's wasting your time, because eventually your true emotions are going to come out. Your true self's going to come out. And when they see that, well, they're not going to be attracted to that. They were attracted to some other version of you. And they're going to be disillusioned and be like, why the fuck are you showing me this now? And they're going to end the relationship, or you're going to end it, or it's going to get nasty. It's not great. You want to just start out with being genuine. Have the courage to be truly yourself, because if you're not doing that, if you're just showing something else, it's fucking bullshit, well, you're never going to be loved for you. And that's what you want at the end of the day. Like, you want someone to love you for you, right? You're not in this to just have validation. Validation's empty and meaningless. It's here one moment and it's gone the next. Like, it goes as quickly as it comes. Love, on the other hand, true love, where someone unconditionally loves you for you, that's not ephemeral. That is enduring. That literally lasts, ideally, until you are not on this planet anymore. So from that standpoint, that's where we're going to wrap that up on point number 2. Being genuine, trust yourself. If you've had struggles with women up until this point in your life, it's not that you're a defective human being. No. You're a beautiful human being. It's just that it can be difficult to fully share ourselves because we're afraid of getting hurt, right? There is a fear that by being fully vulnerable, fully genuine, showing who we truly are, that when we put ourselves out there, that's going to be unwanted. We're going to be rejected. And in primal times, if we got rejected and banished from the tribe, that was tantamount to death, because the way that our ancestors survived was by banding together. So if you got banished from the tribe and you were wandering the African savannah alone, that was death. And that's why social rejection feels so hard, because for our ancestors, which is what molded our DNA, molded our brain, those experiences led to death. We're really, really afraid of social rejection. So when we're fully ourselves, we're really, really afraid that if we put that fully out there, it will get rejected. Whereas, like, if we just put out like a fraction of ourselves and someone rejects it, it still sucks, but we can say like, oh, we can justify it as, oh, they didn't really reject the real me. They rejected something else. Whereas if you put your full self out there and it gets rejected, that's a lot harder to confront. Like, that person didn't want me, and that's okay. That's okay if someone doesn't want the real you. There's going to be someone that does. There's going to be many someones that does. Statistically, there's billions of people on this planet. There will be thousands, if not tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of people who would really, really vibe with you, appreciate who you really are. So again, this is not, if you've had struggles with women, this is not about you being defective. Rather, it's about you developing the courage and the social skill to be able to convey yourself effectively and genuinely, so that other people actually have a chance to connect with you. Because here's the thing, if you don't have the courage and the social skill to convey yourself effectively, to communicate your genuine, vulnerable self, well, you're just never going to get out the gate. There's no possibility that you'll ever find your true love, because they wouldn't be falling in love with the real you. You haven't had the courage and the social skill to show the real you. So that, you got to get that out of the gate. If you're not showing the real you, you're done, right? So really, that's step one. Step zero, like we talked about, is you got to do the approach in the first place. That's called being direct, walking the woman, having no choice but to say something. That's step zero. But then step one is like, if you're not being yourself, if you don't have the courage to be yourself and the social skill to share who you are, well, you might get someone who loves you, but it's not going to be the real you, and that's not going to be what you want, and it's certainly not going to be what they want. It's a lose-lose for everyone. So step number two, be genuine. So we've got be direct, be genuine. Step three, social skill. What does that mean? Well, this is where we're going to talk about some more of like the nuts and bolts of how to actually conduct the approach. But also, I want to emphasize again that social skill is going to be influenced by steps 1 and 2. The more that you practice that skill of just walking towards a woman when you don't know what to fucking say, and then your brain's like, oh, I got to think of something to say, and it will do so in the last 2 feet, getting within 2 feet of them. Over time, the more that you do that, you will naturally build social skill. You will build the skill of talking to a new person and how to actually create a conversation from nothing. Your brain will be forced to, just like a diamond is created from pressure. That pressure of like, holy fuck, I'm within 2 feet of this person, it's so socially awkward to not say something, that pressure will force you to say something. And believe me, you will say something, and the more that you do it, you will get more socially skilled. And at the same time, the more that you challenge yourself to share who you really are and be vulnerable in who you are, what actually matters to you, you will just simply get better at that. And also you will desensitize yourself to the fear that others will judge you when it happens, because either they won't judge you when you're vulnerable, or if they do judge you, you'll see that it's not that bad. Like if you share something vulnerable and meaningful to you and someone criticizes you for it, it'll feel like shit, but then you'll be like, oh, like I didn't die, we're totally good. And frankly, it's probably better to find out sooner than later, because if someone's not fucking with the true you, that's a time to probably just respectfully, I don't want to say cut them off or whatever. I honestly hate that fucking term, because that's sounds very rude and disparaging, and I don't know, just kind of supercilious. But I would say like respectfully that if someone is, I don't know, like, yeah, if you feel like you're routinely sharing something with someone and it's meaningful to you, and they either like dismiss it or just don't take it seriously, or they kind of criticize you for it, that's probably a time to check in and just be like, you know what, I don't really need this person in my life, and it's probably a time to set a healthy boundary or discuss it with them if you feel that they're receptive to a discussion. Or if you don't feel they're receptive to it, you can just be like, hey, like, I'm just not feeling like this relationship is serving me. I apologize if that's hard for you to hear, but I need to take care of myself at this point in my mental health, because this relationship has been harming me. So I would like to respectfully set the boundary of just, I don't want to communicate anymore, or however you want to do it. Anyway, back on the original thing, social skill. You're going to build social skill from the be direct policy. You're going to build that social skill from being genuine. But as far as the social skill as it applies to approaching a woman, what are we really talking about there, right? So the whole be direct thing, I was basically arguing about what you do when you just don't know what the fuck to say. Here's the thing though, the more that you do that, you're going to naturally build confidence. You're going to calm down. Approaches won't be as stressful. And as they're not as stressful, you will naturally have more bandwidth, more mental space to think about what to say. So here's a few ideas. These are some things. I'm actually going to share some aspects of my story with my most recent relationship, which, being completely honest, most of my relationships actually have, being a millennial, have come off of dating apps. But the last one actually came from approaching her in a Kohl's parking lot. And if you're watching, you know who you are. This is going to be fun to kind of reminisce and share some aspects of this approach. But I think it's relevant here to the social skill thing, because in the month leading up to that approach, I was approaching people like crazy and trying different things that, not from a disingenuous standpoint, but just like, what really are the things that can kind of help with ushering in a somewhat connective conversation, right? And there's a few different approaches here. So one approach is the ultimate, just like, hey, like, I thought you were cute, and just, I know this is random, but I just want to say hi. That one, in my opinion, like, you can totally do it. There's nothing wrong with it. And if you're feeling it, go for it. I think that's the overriding principle here is like, if it feels genuine, you're fucking with it, go for it. It's not really my favorite at this point in my life, just because I feel like it can be a little bit hard to know where to go from there. It can be kind of abrupt and yeah, just difficult to transition out of. But I did want to throw that out there. In my opinion, what can be a little bit more graceful to kind of come out of is like, let's say that she's wearing something that you think's pretty cool. You can be like, hey, like, I like that, where'd you get that? And that can lead into stuff, right? Or you can be like, hey, that's a nice nice tattoo. Like, where'd you get that? Like, how did you come to get that? What inspired it? Blah, 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 right? There's questions that can kind of naturally emanate from that. So focusing on something about them, or like, maybe if you're at the gym and you see them doing like a unique exercise. I've literally approached women several times doing that, being like, hey, that's a really cool exercise. And I meant it. I was like, yo, I've never seen someone doing that. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? So that's another cool example. One other thing too is you can draw attention to like something unique in the environment, right? Like one time when I was at a concert, I just went up to someone, was like, dude, like, look at that thing over there. And like, we just started having a conversation randomly about it. I don't even remember what it was, but that's another example. So that's kind of getting things going. There's so many different ways to do that. And again, why I didn't lead with this one is, in terms of order of priority, this is not more important than policy 1, be direct, because it focuses on too much on like what to say. And I don't want to miscommunicate that should be your first priority. It shouldn't. So thinking about what to say should only be a priority after you've already established the habit of approaching women. You feel confident in that. And after doing it regularly, you now have more mental bandwidth and less stress in your nervous system to be able to think about what to say. But if you're like struggling with even just doing the approach, fuck thinking about what to say. That's where be direct comes in. Literally just move your limbs. Move your limbs, walk towards the person until you have no choice but to say something. And those first few times, you're probably going to say something really stupid, and that's totally freaking cool. But you got to build that habit first. So not putting the cart before the horse. This step 3 is really only relevant once you've got step 1, step 2 more locked in. But that said, once you do have 1 and 2 locked in, I think step 3 can be helpful. So we talked a little bit there about some ways you can kind of get the approach started. But then I feel like sometimes there's a point in the approach where it's like, especially depending on the other person and how they feel around strangers or new people, even with a solid start to the approach, it is easy for a conversation to fall flat. And also I would warn against judging. Like, it's very easy to judge and future project that, oh, because this conversation is falling flat, that must mean this isn't my person, or, we're not compatible or whatever. No, it doesn't necessarily mean that, right? Like, don't attribute too much meaning. Like, don't overgeneralize or jump to conclusions there, because there are so many factors, right? Like how comfortable people are with strangers. Maybe they're rushing to get to an appointment, right? You just caught them in a moment, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything about your long-term chemistry or compatibility if a conversation happens to fall a little bit flat in the first couple of minutes. So don't worry too much about that. That said, if a conversation does fall flat and you're interested in this person and you want to get it going back up, that can be a time to introduce like a fun type of question. And one of my favorites for this is like, what are you excited about in your life right now? It kind of gives them the option to be vulnerable if they want, but they also don't have to be vulnerable. And it can just be like it can be a fun conversation to just kind of get into. Another one can be like, hey, like, what's something fun that you and your friends have done recently? I like that one a lot too, because it's also seeing it. Inevitably, you're going to see at least a little bit of like how they regard their friends, how they interact with them, like what meaning their friendships have in their life. Those are just a couple examples. You can think of some others, but the general key, the theme there is you want to be targeting something that's fun, positive, encouraging, option to go vulnerable, but also option to not go vulnerable. And then from there, I'd say if it's really not going forward, well, just let them go, right? Like, it's not a match, and that's okay. Like, I think that's one of the main things here too is don't force a match. Just because someone's attractive, right? That's a prerequisite for you to approach them, but doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to get out the gate. That's what the approach is for, to kind of see like, hey, all right, you're hot, but do we have anything in common? And beyond in common. And also, I don't mean to say like you need a bunch in common to have a good relationship, but it's like, hey, what do we have going here? Do we have something of substance that we can build on, or is this kind of lame and just gonna die and not even worth pursuing? So there we go. We got our 3 points. Be direct, be genuine, build social skill. Beautiful. So what's really awesome about this though is I think, in conclusion, I have sensed both in myself and with talking with lots of people on this subject, especially right now in 2026, there is so much, unfortunately, hopelessness around dating, right? Dating apps like have created a really nasty dynamic where on the one hand, women are overwhelmed, right? Because of the absolute volume of requests that they're getting. And also just, the few rotten apple guys, or maybe more than few, like the rotten apple dudes on there spoil it for all the guys who are well-intentioned, right? Because these guys are total douchebags and will be overly sexually aggressive and provocative towards these women. And for a lot of women, that just completely turns them off, makes them jaded, makes them not discourages them from actually putting in a reasonable amount of effort. And then for guys who are well-intentioned, they're perceiving that lack of effort from women. And it's just a vicious cycle, right? Because now men get resentful that women aren't fucking trying, and why aren't women paying attention to me, and blah, 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 blah. So it's a really hard dating landscape, right? Like so many people are meeting on dating apps, and the dating app dynamic, like we just talked about, is pretty fucked. But then if you try to meet people in person, because so many people are meeting on dating apps, it's not the same as it was even 20 or 30 years ago. Like talking to my parents, right? When there was no dating apps, it was just way more expected and socially acceptable that if you were at a bar or some sort of social function, like totally normal for people to just go up and talk to one another. It wasn't like, oh my God, this is a big deal. Whereas now, I think a lot of people have a fear that it's a big deal. I've tried to argue in this video that it's still not a big deal. It's just a mental construct. We build up the fear in our heads, and the more that you practice policy 1, be direct, you'll see that it's really not that big of a deal to approach. And if you fail, it's also not a big deal. You just learn from it and move on. But point is, man, there's a lot of, I think, hopelessness going around. I've certainly felt that in the past. And the control has been taken from us. The bat has been taken out of our hands, and that you have to rely on dating apps now or random chance for, a hot, amazing woman, the woman of your dreams, to fall in your lap. And I want this video to be a message of hope for you. You don't have to rely on dating apps if you don't want to. You do not have to rely on random chance if you don't want to. The control is in your hands. You have the control. You can take it back. You are absolutely capable of approaching a woman. No doubt. It is within you to do it. There's nothing stopping you except potentially for you. The only thing that could limit you is you. But I think this is an incredibly empowering concept, because if you actually start implementing these 3 things, be direct, be genuine, build social skill, if you start practicing approaching women regularly, you're going to get better at it. You're going to build confidence. You're going to build courage. You're going to see that it's not that big of a deal to fall on your face and fail a little bit and learn from it. And the more that you do that, I think you'll actually find the process really enjoyable. Learning is fun. Building confidence is fun. Building positive self-regard where you can be proud of yourself, that is fucking fun, dude. And the more that you do it, you are going to be in control of your reality. Sure, you can't control that the next person you approach is going to be the woman of your dreams. You can't control that, and I'm not going to be delusional and argue that. But what you can change is how often you approach a woman. And by definition, your fucking person, and I think there's thousands of your persons out there, but your person is fucking out there. So therefore, the more women that you can approach directly, genuinely, and with social skill, and you keep building that skill over time, you keep putting your genuine self out there, you keep being direct, the more women that you can approach like that, you're just increasing the odds, baby. It's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. Don't forget that. It's statistics. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? If your person's out there, but you never approach, by definition, you're never going to find them. And if you approach 100 people, you're increasing your odds. If you approach 1,000 people, you're increasing your odds even further. And you know what controls how many approaches you do, how quickly you do them? You get to choose how quickly you find your person. And how fucking awesome is that? How awesome is it that you don't have to depend on something external? You can depend on yourself. You can cultivate that fire and that courage and that passion and that zest and that confidence and that capability in yourself. You don't have to rely on anything else. This very important question in your life of who's going to be my partner? Who am I going to create a life with? You don't have to rely on anything else. How discouraging, how hopeless of a message is that? To be like, oh my God, like woe is me, I can't do anything about it, like dating apps suck and blah, 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 blah. No. Fuck all that. You are in control of building this skill. You are in control of building this skill, continually executing on it, continually building the habit, continually approaching people. Because the more that you do it, the faster you do it. I don't want to say faster because that almost implies like there's urgency. Nah, be chill about it. But seriously, the more that you do it, the more quickly you will get to that person. You will expedite the process of finding your person. And how awesome is that? You don't have to sit around and wait around. And you also don't have to be perfect here. I would urge you to really steer clear of perfectionism, right? You don't have to be perfect. Don't put that pressure on yourself. If you see a woman and don't approach, it's all good, man. It's all good. You're a human being. Learn from that. Let that reorient your mindset and then continue that be direct next time, right? Because here's the thing. If you see, let's just say on average, man, you see over the course of a week 10 hot women. Even if you only approached one of those hot women out of 10 every week, that's 50 women a year, dude. 50. Like, that's amazing. 1 out of 10. That's not even that good. If you continue to work on this skill and get yourself up to 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, man, you could be approaching 100 women a year or more than 100 women a year if needed. Of course, once you find your person, You're only looking for one. And that's another thing. Remember that. You're only looking for one. You're not looking to date everyone. You're looking to date one. You just got to stay consistent. Keep putting yourself out there. And remember, you're in the driver's seat. You're in the driver's seat. You are the one in control of this train. You are fucking driving the train. And nothing can slow you down on your process to finding your person except for you. So get the fuck out of your way and start approaching, start putting yourself out there, be direct, walk towards them until you do not have a choice but to say something, because it will be so socially awkward if you don't. Be genuine in your approach, be yourself, put yourself out there, fall a little bit, fail a little bit, learn from it, build some fucking social skill, rinse and repeat. And every single time you fail, every single time you learn from that failure, every single time that person you approached isn't your person, well, guess what? You're one person closer to finding your person. And that's all there is to it. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. We got more coming all the time. I was so happy to bring this to you today. And me being a single man myself, that woman that I approached and mentioned earlier in the video, I approached in a Kohl's parking lot, and we ended up having a beautiful 5 months together. That ended pretty recently, so, that kind of sucks. I miss her. I love her very much, but we both agreed it was for the best. But I don't regret it. It was a beautiful 5 months, and now that I'm single, I'm joining you. I'm on the whole thing. And in fact, I just did my first approach since having broken up with her. I just did my first approach yesterday, man, and I had pussied out on several before that. So you're not alone. I'm over here working on the courage as well. I'm not a perfect human, but we're into this together. Let's fucking get this shit. And just in case you're interested, maybe you'll find this inspiring, I'll just really quickly share how that approach went in that Kohl's parking lot. I was literally on the phone with my mom. I was about to go to Trader Joe's, pick up some food, mostly for a binge, to be honest. I was going to get some ice cream and some, those, milk chocolate covered pretzels with peanut butter on the inside. Man, I fucking love those. So I was literally about to go binge. I was talking with my mom. My mom was sharing something really vulnerable, actually. And I felt so bad because, I love my mom. But I was like, Mom, I saw this woman and she just fucking stood out to me. And I was like, Mom, I'm so sorry. I got to call you back. So, and just real quickly, I will say I did call my mom back afterwards and we resumed our comment. It was great. My mom got a big laugh out of, she was like, it was a woman, huh? And I was like, yeah. But anyway, shout out to my mom. Love you. And so anyway, I approached this woman and was just like, yo, I was just on the phone with my mom and I just saw you and I told her bye, and I never fucking do that. But I was like, Mom, I got to talk to this woman. And here I am. And then that woman was like, wow, what a thing. Like, I take it you're pretty close with your mom. And then boom, off to the races with our combo. And I think at one point I did ask her, like, what are you excited about in your life right now? And she was like, oh, I'm into archery. I was like, oh, no way, dude. And we ended up doing archery for our first date. And yeah, that was that. And it was on Memorial Day too. On Memorial Day that we had that. And actually, no, that was our second date. I mean, our first date was right after the approach. I was like, you know, I'm free for the evening. I'm going to call her. So I called her and was like, hey, are you free this evening? Like, and she's like, who is this man? Just call me right now. But then we ended up doing a little walk, and yeah, it was a great time. And if you are watching this video, may you be well. I'm thinking about you. And yeah, fun to reminisce. But that's what can happen also. Like, right before you approach a woman, think about, like, you never know what could be on the other side of that approach. I never ever would have guessed before I approached her that we would have had those 5 months together, those beautiful 5 months. And in the case that you end up getting married to that person, imagine that, like 30 years later being like, wow, I never could have imagined before I approached that person that would be the woman of my dreams, that I'd spend the rest of my life with, the love of my life. Isn't that fucking incredible? You never know what's on the other side of that approach. Don't let your excuses stop you. Have some imagination, have some creativity. If you think she's hot and you're feeling that vibe, you're feeling that energy, go and explore it. Walk towards her until you have no choice but to say something, because it'll be so socially awkward if you don't. I'm going to leave you on that. Again, if you like this video, please feel free to give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Go enjoy it. Peace.